Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the first presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump, of course, which was a very terrible night on both ends and for America in general. So before we get into the 6 takeaways of this article, overall takeaways that I had and as well as polling, I just want to go over something that I find incredibly alarming for the future of our politics, our country, overall the general morale of our nation, is that this debate was filled with so much tension. From the second they walked onto the stage, there was so much tension. Usually candidates go on stage, they shake hands, which they did in the 2020 debate, which has been the president for presidential debates, sorry, tongue twister there, for so many years, so many presidential debates. But then here they walk on the stage, they don't really acknowledge each other at first. They don't thank anyone for their time or for CNN for hosting it. It goes straight into the questions and their personal attacks on each other as well. Never before have the attacks been so personal. Of course, 2020 was also very, had some quick lines and remarks that are still very well known today, as well as 2016 with Hillary and Trump. But this debate was like none other. There was so much vehement hatred. You could see it in both their eyes, and maybe you could see it in their eyes in these clips that the New York Times has highlighted here. But there was just so much hatred on this stage, and obviously that resembles what the country feels towards either or maybe both of these two men. But I just think that's so incredibly alarming that this is what our country has come to, that we have fully forgotten civil discourse. Of course, we can discuss every single political issue there is and try to come to conclusions because we all see the same problems, but we all have different solutions to them. But the discourse, the civil discourse, is what brings us to solutions, is what leads to bipartisanship that actually accounts for fixing these issues in our country. And what we saw on that debate stage here wasn't that. And I fear that this is going to lead into something much greater in American politics to come, and I'm pretty worried about that. And one other thing that I'd like to mention is that the polling changes that we see from this debate, of course, and I'll get into this later, but Biden didn't do as well as people had hoped, as he needed to prove. The burden of proof was on him to show that he's not an old man, that he's still with it, he still can defend himself and present himself to be a strong, competent leader, and that didn't happen. And so there was a slight dip in polling for him, but overall, the polling after one debate, or two debates, or a felony, or any of these minor things aren't going to sway voters' opinions fully. They're just going to, further give confidence to the Trump voters that, yes, they're making the right decision. Or with Biden voters being like, well, this guy was bad too, so I'm still supporting this guy, right? These events like this aren't really going to sway polling that much. Even though it was a bad night for Biden, it's still not going to change Biden's supporters and their votes that much. But what it is going to affect is, again, the morale of the country, the way we address issues like this. That's what it's going to affect. So just wanted to lay out that disclaimer there. I know it was kind of long, but something I think is very important. So going into the main takeaways, there's a lot. And as the headline says here, Biden failed to ease worries about his age, which is very concerning for him because his campaign, they're the ones that set this debate up. I don't even remember when, but I think a month or two ago, Biden was the one that made a video out to Trump being like, hey, let's debate on a Wednesday. Here you're free on Wednesdays. Let's debate because you seem to be hiding and I just want to have a debate. And it was his burden to prove that he is fit for office. His team made that, video and everything. That was the plan, to have a debate to show that he is mentally competent, to ease worries about this, because that's been the major thing, right? His policies and, everything that he stands on hasn't changed all that much from 2020. Maybe some people are, not happy with what he's done with increasing tensions worldwide, with maybe they think he's gone too progressive or not progressive enough, or maybe they're just ill-informed about what he has done as a president, which I think is one of the major flaws of his presidency as well, is that his administration and overall the press corps hasn't done a good job of adequately telling the American people what he's done, which is a large list. We went over that in one of the previous videos, but just wanted to lay that out there that, he has done a lot, but I think that the publicizing of what he has done hasn't been adequate. But all that to say that he's still the same person he was in 2020. It's just that he's 4 years older. He's got all this extra baggage on him. Mostly that he can't get off stage himself. If you saw, there's a clip afterwards of Jill Biden leading him off the stage after Trump had gone, everyone had gone. And of course, there wasn't a live audience or anything because Trump feeds off of that. And that was one of the prerequisites of having this debate, was no live audience, muted mics, so that Trump couldn't interrupt Biden. There wouldn't be those viral moments like there were in 2020 and 2016, which actually, again, backfired on the Biden campaign because it highlighted Biden's inability to speak about an issue for 2 minutes. And there were a couple moments in the debate where the moderators, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, told President Trump, they're like, hey, you still have 40 seconds left. You still have a minute left. I think the American people deserve to hear your take on this. Is there nothing else that you have to say as the President of the United States to the American people about immigration, about the economy, about whatever it may be? that you have in this time that we've allotted, because most of the case in these debates and whatnot, they're cut off. They have more to get out there and they're cut off, or they're all very skilled speakers obviously, and they know how to time themselves to where they have just enough time to get everything they want out there. But in this case, we had the opposite. We had him with extra time, and not using that because he knows that he can't speak, that he's losing his train of thought, and he had somewhat good rebuttals to them, being like, yeah, I actually do have more to say. And then he goes into that. But his delivery was the worst thing. That's one of the things that majorly, just ruined this debate for Biden, is that his content, maybe if you're reading everything he was saying on a transcript, that might have been good. But him just like blabbering off and just not being able to string together a coherent sentence, him falling off in many clips like they show here, with like the Medicaid remarks, or just overall it was very terrible delivery on his end. But how can you blame him, honestly? He's 81 years old. He is well beyond the threshold of a senior citizen. It's sad to see that, he's still going through the ringer at 81 years old. You'd hope that someone would be at a retirement home or on a beach somewhere relaxing with their family. But no, he's out here trying to be the president of the United States, trying to do that job and then run for a second term as well. And nothing based on his policies, but it just seems like he has reached the limit to what he can sustain. And if you have watched, in these clips have resurfaced now after and before the debate, but in 2019, 2020 was when Biden was running for the original Democratic nomination for president. There were a lot of concerns about his age even then, which is hard to believe. Like 4 or 5 years ago, he was much better. And he himself would tell the newscasters and the journalists, hey, you shouldn't trust me. These are valid concerns I have about my age, but you should just watch me. Can I still run up the steps of Air Force One? Do I still have energy? Can I still speak clearly and sufficiently? Can I still be a leader? And many of those answers to those questions are inconclusive or no, right? And he can't run up the steps of Air Force One. He has trouble even getting up the steps of Air Force One. And this is not meant to be a personal attack on President Biden whatsoever. I don't think there's any more need for that in today's politics. It's just to say that the president of the United States of America is the most powerful position on earth. And if you do not have someone who's physically and mentally and psychologically and emotionally and everything capable of sustaining that role, then maybe they're not the best fit. Not to say that, hey, this other guy is best fit. He's only a few years younger. Those same concerns for his age that were present for Biden are not present for Trump, because he's always been this character that doesn't really have, of course he strings together coherent sentences, but still they're not that coherent. They have this little Trump flair where he's saying something else or saying something really weird. So yeah, the same things don't, apply to Trump when it comes to his age, but still, he's only a few years younger. He still has his own host of issues, including being a felon, having serious morality issues, and overall, again, everything. I don't need to summarize really what the, major criticisms of either of these candidates are, because I think we know that broadly. And then to speak about Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, so as a headline says, they let the candidates be the stars of the show. Absolutely. So I think that CNN, and particularly Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, of course, since they are the moderators, really wanted this president, the two candidates, to be the focus of the show, right? In previous presidential debates, we've had criticisms of the moderators being too active in the debates. They ask too many questions, they fact check too much, they cut off in certain aspects, they're just too involved overall. And I think that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, knowing that this is going to be one of the most important presidential debates in United States history, probably the most up to this point, because there are these two candidates who just like have this vehement hatred of each other, and it's their rematch. It's incredibly historic in so many ways. Them realizing that this is going to be such an important, night and event, they didn't want their legacies going down as being too involved or wanting to be attention hogs or overly fact-checking one candidate and obviously favoring the other. I think they wanted to keep their legacies intact, the reliability and credibility of CNN and them as journalists intact. So I think that they really tried to be careful with how much they were involved, right? There was no fact-checking whatsoever. They left the fact-checking up to the candidates, and in many cases when Trump overly exaggerated something, which we all know this, Donald Trump speaks in hyperbole, that's pretty much well known, but with his hyperbolic speaking, Biden very rarely fact-checked him. I mean, he almost never really did directly, being like, hey, that's untrue, he kind of made general statements like, oh, everything that comes out of your mouth is a lie. And then there are also a couple breaks. I want to address that too. There are two breaks in the 90 minutes. So one was halfway, and then one was right before their closing remarks. This was another addition and a prerequisite to even hosting the debates that Biden or Trump agreed to by, attending the debate. That was, again, supposed to be favoring Biden, to give him a moment of rest, a moment of break, to catch his breath, to be able to, just get a second to himself before just going at it like for 90 minutes, which would be very hard for him, obviously, as, someone who isn't mentally all there and is obviously not the same person and president and candidate that he was 4 years ago. Another thing, so there were a lot of emergency calls, I assume, on the Democratic leadership side during and after the debate. So Kamala Harris got on the air, obviously told CNN, hey, we had a slow start but a strong finish, when even the vice president is admitting that this was a bad debate on Biden's end. Oh my goodness, it speaks volumes. Hey, that's not what the Democrats were looking for because of this debate. They're not looking to have a bad performance. They were looking for reassurance for the American people to do better, to get that increase in polling. If he had shown, then we would have seen much different results. We would have seen a rise in polling on Biden's end. Certainly. Like, that would have been amazing for him to get over that hump and been like, hey, you guys don't have to worry about my mental acuity or my age, just worry about my policies, which majority of Americans agree with in many aspects, especially when it comes to abortion, which is Biden's strongest issue. And speaking on that, at one point in the debate, I don't know if they listed this here, but at one point in the debate, President Biden got a question about abortion, but he shifted it to immigration, which is his weakest issue by far and Trump's strongest issue. It was terrible on his end. And keep in mind that President Trump took a week off of his presidential duties and interviews and speeches and everything to prepare for this debate. So that, bleep show was after a week of preparation on his end. Just another thing to note, and I've said this before, but if this debate was in transcript form, we probably say that President Biden was the winner on many things. He sounded great, right? I mean, again, not sounded, because the way he was acting throughout the debate was not good. If we see here in a couple of clips when if it's available here, when he's just listening to President Trump, he has this look on his face that's just very concerning. Right here, sure, he looks stronger, more mentally adequate, but still, it just seems like every breath that's coming out of his mouth and every, movement that he's making is so strained and difficult for him to do. And then there are a couple faces, I don't know if it's going to get to it in this clip, but when he's just like looking at Trump speaking, and it's just like, yeah, it's just pretty bad when his just mouth is open, and yeah, he doesn't look great, right? If he was laughing it off or just shaking his head like he was in some of these clips, which I think some of these clips are pretty favorable to him, that would have been much better for his end. But of course, that's not what the entirety of the debate was. And then Trump's performance, we've already gotten to this in large parts, but speaking hyperbole, verbally attacking Biden, of course, they got very personal in some aspects, talking about golf and Trump's extramarital affairs and a whole host of other things, right, with Biden's son, again, a lot of things. So now going into the polling aspect of things, now that we've gotten over this, and again, the main takeaways being that, hey, Biden's delivery was terrible, his words were pretty adequate, honestly, and that a lot of the predispositions that were set to favor Biden actually favor Trump with the mics, and it being hosted at CNN, it didn't really favor Biden in any way. I'm sure maybe if it was on Fox News, it'd be even worse for him. But I think, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash did not do a favor for him at all. And then additionally, Trump did what he was supposed to do. He remained restrained in many aspects. He let Biden talk and, get himself in these holes where it's like, oh, hey, what do you even say? I don't even know what he said, and I don't think that he knows either. So overall, win for Trump generally. Now going over to some polling, I don't know if this will show this exactly, if we can get to June 27th, which was the night of the debate, yes. So for that, it was pretty dead even in like the following days before the debate, and I think that Biden had a slight edge on Trump. That was what the polling looked like before, and then once it got to the debate, oops, that goes down, and it's at this like really terrible point for President Biden. Right, this debate did not ease concerns whatsoever. Again, this is just the 538 polling, but Nate Silver, who works for 538 and ABC and is the head of all of this polling, has said repeatedly that he thinks that Trump will win this debate. He said that a year ago, last August, that the Democrats should have announced that President Biden won't be running for re-election, so that there would be time for a proper primary process to get any Democrat that the majority of Democrats and Americans support, so that they would actually have a chance of beating Trump. But at this point, after that debate performance, performance, after people saw that this man cannot speak for 90 minutes. He couldn't even speak the first half. The second half, he was getting warmed up a bit. But after a week of preparation, which, again, the President of the United States shouldn't have to take a week of preparation. He should be doing his job that the American people have elected him to be doing, right? He shouldn't be preparing that much. If he gets a phone call in 2 a.m. that we've been bombed or striked, God forbid, what's he going to do then, right? There are only a certain number of hours within the day where he's awake. There's just arises so many concerns that people have about his mental and physical acuity that haven't in the slightest been lessened by that debate. And then just looking at the New York Times polling as well. So this, again, if it'll let me, I don't think it'll let me see the exact day, but we can, this is July, so we know that around here is probably the debate or whatnot, and then Trump obviously surges, but then it's going back down to where it was before, so I don't know how much the debate really impacted it. Again, I think long-term, the debate won't have as much of an impact, especially if Biden is able to make some more speeches and appearances where he seems much more coherent and with it. And then with Kennedy, which is obviously what's going to be happening, Kennedy is going to be on the ballot in a lot of states. It's going to be Kennedy takes more votes away from Biden than he does from Trump. And then we also see that in all the swing states, Trump is leading. So the DNC has a major issue on their hands. I don't even know what they'll have to do. This debate was absolutely terrible for President Biden. They honestly shot themselves in the foot with this appearance. And again, raspy. Honestly, a lot of the times, even if he was speaking coherently, his voice was just so raspy. I know I'm not one to talk, but it was just so raspy that no one could understand it. So that was what happened Thursday night. You probably watched it, but we'll have to move forward. There are scheduled to be 2 more debates. I don't know if there will be. I don't know what will even happen with them. We'll just have to see. This election cycle is going to be very eventful. Already has been very surprising and obviously very consequential. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.